Hey, everybody. How are you doing? I hope everyone is well. I'm excited to be here for our second day, our day 2 of No More Meltdowns. So let me just make sure everything is good with our tech. I'm so glad you're here. Some of you are back for a second day. So I want you in the chat, if you can hear me, I would love for you to type where you are in the world. I know we had a couple of folks, I think we had somebody from Australia join us at the very end yesterday, so that was kind of fun. But go ahead and type in the chat where you are. If it's your first time, let us know. If you're a parent or a teacher or some other professional, or you have some other interest in working with children who are having meltdowns. So go ahead and type that in the chat and we will get to see that. And I wanted to let you know that my favorite person is here today to say hello to all of you. Come on over here, Hero. Hero is my son that I talk about all the time. So I wanted to say hi. Hello. Smiling. Yes, thank you very much. I might call on him later to come join us. I'm signing because he's deaf. You guys know that. But I may call on him later. He's over there. He's busy right now. But if we have some questions at the end, those of you who stay to the end, we're recording this, but I don't record the Q&A time. I don't record that part. So if you are staying on at the end, then if you have questions specifically for Hero, you're welcome to ask Hero. Hero can answer your questions at the end. Okay, so that'll be awesome too. If you're not joining us by Zoom, those of you who are listening to the recording, you need to come live if you can. Because it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying the interaction with the folks that have been coming live. I've had some amazing questions at the end, so please do join us if you can. I know some of you have other things going on at this time of day, so you can't do that. And so I'm not going to judge you or pressure you to do that, but if you can, we would love to have you. All right, so just if you don't have that, just contact me at support@wingbuilder.com if you need information about how to get here live. Or if you have any questions at all, you're welcome to email me at support, SUPPORT, @wingbuilder, WING, like a birdie wing, wingbuilder.com. All right, so I want to get into it right away. I'm loving it in the chat. I see who everybody's coming. We've got Catherine from Wilmington, Catherine from Fishers, 2 Catherines, Chicago, El Paso, Plainview, Texas. Hi. Somebody says hi. I'm not sure who you are. She's in PA Region 10 centers. And we have Catherine, State Education Specialist for Head Start. Post-adoption case manager, El Paso. Fantastic. I used to live in Mexico, by the way, for 3 years. That's a whole nother part of my life. I can tell you that story someday. But I used to teach English, just language arts, 6th grade language arts in an international school, actually an American school in Monterrey, Mexico. So Texas is basically a suburb of Mexico. Melissa, hey, checking in from the unceded lands of the Coast Salish peoples, the Puyallup and the Nisqually tribes, presently named Tacoma, Washington, also in Head Start. Melissa, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I just told Hero that Melissa's here. He was excited to know that. School counselor, Pennsylvania, taught English in Mexico too. Awesome, yay. So yes, I love Spanish-speaking folks. That's one reason why I adopted one, but living in Mexico was a phenomenal experience. Anyway, that's for another day. Today we're talking about meltdowns, how to support children who are just not able to handle some of the big feelings, or they're handling them, but they're using a different kind of way to cope with that by expressing those big feelings in their body, in their words, in their ways that they're interacting with us, right? They're having these huge, this wash of emotions, this feeling of overwhelm, this feeling of stress. And yesterday we talked about how it's really more like they're drowning. It's like emotional drowning. It's just feeling this rush, like the ocean waves are coming over them because of their extreme anxiety, because of their extreme feelings of stress, feelings of fear and panic. It really, I explain to people who don't understand it, it's like having a panic attack. It really is. And so I describe, like, if we're ever out in public, if Hero's ever having a hard time with us, and he's feeling stressed out and he's kind of shut down, I will just tell folks that he's having a panic attack. And that way they understand right away, okay, oh, it's anxiety. He's not a bad kid. He's not trying to hurt me, or he's not trying to hurt himself right now. He's just not handling it very well. And it's just that overwhelm, and it's just coming over him. And so he needs a minute so that he can begin to access his executive function and access his breathing and access all those things that can help him handle those overwhelming feelings. So that's what it is. So yesterday we talked about a lot of different things. We really focused on how to tame the trauma dragon. We talked about that very first step. So remember, there are 3 things that we need to learn that we're going to be learning this week, or really maybe for some of you, this is a refresher. But yesterday we talked about stopping the actual meltdown, stopping it and helping the child to just co-regulate with you. You know, co-regulation is about being peaceful, being with them in the meltdown, going out to the drowning person and being someone who is a strong anchor who can pull them out of those overwhelming feelings. And that's all. It's just about helping them to get calm. And then today and tomorrow and on Thursday, we're going to be talking about the next part of this, which is once you get really good at ending the meltdown. And we talked about, we're not going to use restraint. There's no reason to ever restrain a child unless you don't have a good safety plan and it gets to the point where, you know, things are out of control and somebody's going to get hurt. But if you're using this system consistently, you're going to know when it gets to that point so that you can jump in and use your strategies before it gets to the 911 level, because we don't want it to get to that dangerous, life-threatening situation. And yesterday, we did have a participant yesterday who has a 4-year-old, and she said, well, I don't know if I'm in the right place because my 4-year-old doesn't really do anything life-threatening. It's just that she's hurting her sibling, right? So this I'm just talking about the extreme version of this because I lived with the extreme version of this. And because so many families come to me and teachers come to me with the extreme version and they say, I don't know what to do. So I want you to understand that this works even for a mild version of this, okay? You may not get to the point where you have to put your child in a hospital. You might not get to the point where you have to call backups to come help you because you're in danger. That may never happen to you. I hope that never happens to you. I really do. But this is I just want you to know that there's a range of anxiety. There's mild anxiety. There's a little bit of a panic attack where they're just feeling shut down, or they might just get irritable. And then there's all the way up to that level 9, level 10, so anxious that they are exploding into an explosive episode. And so I'm training about that sort of level 8, 9, 10 today. But understand that this applies to any other level of anxiety, even if it's mild or moderate. Okay. All right. So we've got people from Seattle. We've got it all here. I'm very excited to see all of you. So I'm going to share my screen here. I hope you like the music. That's been fun for me, putting that together, that little video. All righty. So this is for home and school. Remember, we're talking about how to help kids in their families, but also how to help them at school. And it's going to look slightly different because in school, you don't have siblings, you have classmates, right? And so there's all the interactions of the kids going on in the classroom. Sometimes there's one teacher managing 30, 40 kids in a classroom. Sometimes there's a teacher and an instructional aide. Sometimes there are other people in the building that you can call to come and assist as needed. So we can talk about that if you have questions about what that would look like in the middle of one of these panic attack, meltdown, overwhelm, drowning emotional behavior issues, right? What does that look like? That's gonna be part of your support plan and part of your kind of planning ahead for what to do, because we've identified these are kids. We talked about those spiraling stages of growth, and these are kids that are at that very first stage most of the time where they're in crisis and they're in conflict and they're just having all these challenges. So if you know that's the case, then you need to make a plan for them. And it's not a behavior plan. It's not about making them, behave better. Really, the behavior plan is for the adults. You need to make a plan for what the adults are going to do, the caring adults in the building. How are you going to support a child who's melting down? How are you going to support that child and make it very safe and pull them out of the water and B is there to support them and not be there to tell them what the rules are, tell them they made a bad choice, connect and then correct, which I told you I hate that phrase. I do not believe that you should be correcting a child who's drowning emotionally. It's not the time or place for you to have those conversations. You have conversations about things later when everybody's nervous system is calm and everybody can access their prefrontal cortex, which is where conversations happen. Language happens when the body is calm. Language doesn't get processed effectively when you're in a panic attack. So it's not time to do a lot of talking. Okay. In our case, I have a deaf child, so I had to use a whole lot more body language and proximity in a lot of things that I think work for all kids, whether they're deaf or hearing. Kids they just don't have access to that language. So anyway, so pardon me, I'm dry today. I gotta drink some more water. So I can talk forever. So I want to watch the time. I told you I wasn't going to go for an hour yesterday. We went kind of long. So you can type questions in the chat. I will stop in a little bit to answer them, but I'm going to try to get through all of what I want to train you on today. First, then we'll have some questions and we'll stop the recording and then we'll have additional question and answer after that. Okay. So we talked about traditional discipline not working and what the results of that is for our children. We talked about these are the 5 keys. We're going to learn how to stop, prevent, and eliminate all of these meltdowns because you don't want to live like that. I told you about Hero and how we started this approach, how Heart Strong International started. We talked a little bit about the spiraling stages of growth. And by the way, it's not like you go up these stages and then you're always at level 4, step 8 all the time, right? We all, even adults, we go up and down the spiral on a daily basis. Life is messy. Emotions are cyclical. Emotions go up and down. Some people have very extreme highs and lows. Some people, they're pretty steady, but they may have good and bad days. This is just life, okay? So we need to stop getting that idea of perfection, that we want our children to be perfect and always behaving like perfect angels all day long, every day. That's not going to happen. And that's true for adults too. But the idea is we want to get them up this little spiral to the point where they're not constantly in chaos and crisis, because that's just going to feel better for everybody. Everybody's going to feel more peaceful and loving and joyful and just have a better time if you're not constantly in crisis. But you're going to have days that you go down there and then you just need to learn all of these strategies that we're talking about to help you calm your own nervous system and help calm the child's nervous system. Progress, not perfection. We talked about fight or flight, the stress response, and then what we do and what we don't do, which is restrain and do a big lecture and talk about choices and all those things. Talked about the trauma dragon. Trauma dragon is just another word for dysregulation, a dysregulated nervous system. It's important to have a safety plan and be doing your own self-care in between. But when the meltdown happens, the only objective, and I told you this is why this is the easiest part, is that you're calming yourself and calming the child. That's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. It's not about complying with the rules. It's just about being compassionate, being with that child in that moment of emotional drowning, getting them to dry land. That's it. That's all you have to do. And you do that over and over and over and over and over and over again until the child starts to kind of think, they've stopped restraining me. They're not giving me lectures. These adults might actually be safe people. This mother actually loves me. She's not nagging me anymore. This teacher actually cares about how I feel. Maybe I should listen to what she has to say. Okay. Then you can start having conversations. But until you have won that child's trust and that child feels absolutely safe in your presence and isn't worried that you're going to grab them and hold them down and make them feel like they're suffocating even more. They're not worried that they're going to be in trouble and get sent to the principal's office or be in trouble and have their iPad taken away, all their privileges taken away, all those things. When you reduce that fear and that stress, now you're starting to win their heart. You're not winning the battle of the wills. It's no longer that tug of war. Remember, we talked about the tug of war going back and forth. It's not that anymore. It's about the child is now on your team. And that's the objective. That's why you just want to make it super, super safe. to get them on your team. Once they're on your team and you've won sort of their heart and you have that relationship and it's really strong and you really are honestly trustworthy. This isn't about pretending to be trustworthy or pretending to be a safe person. You're actually a safe person. Then they're going to start to trust you. They're going to start to listen to what you have to say. Then you can start having conversations in between the meltdowns, not during the meltdowns. And then you start to see the growth and the healing and the progress, not perfection, but the progress in both of you in the relationship, and things get better and better and better. And then it's just amazing. And then you can have your son come help you do, trainings on Zoom for other people, which is delightful for me, that I have a mature 20-year-old who's not melting down, who's not 911. We don't have to go to the hospital for a mental health emergency. We don't have any of that chaos anymore. He's just a delightful 20-year-old with amazing talents that I have wonderful conversations with on a daily basis. That's the goal, a loving connection and a really calm, peaceful home or a calm, peaceful classroom. Okay, so we talked about some strategies, how to do that. And then we're going to talk about today, steps 2 and 3. Okay, so let's get into it. So key number 2, this isn't step 2, this is key number 2. There's 5 keys. Key number 2 is to implement the 4 essentials for growth and healing. And we touched on these a little bit yesterday. So let's talk about what I mean by this. The 4 essentials, and I think of them as the 4 legs of a traditional table, right? I've got a table right now that I'm sitting at. If you don't have 4 legs on the table gets wobbly. And eventually, if you put too much pressure on a wobbly table, the table's going to fall over and everything's going to fall apart. So that's how I want you to consider these 4 essentials. They are the 4 legs of the table that must be in place in order for you to effectively use heart-strong parenting or heart-strong teaching to support a child's growth and healing and progress, not perfection. Okay, so they are a safety plan, self-care, strategies, and support. Safety plan, self-care, strategies, and support. There are actually 4 other ones, and I've done a more in-depth training on this. There are additional essentials and things that help growth and healing, but I think these are the 4 foundational essentials. If you don't have these, the table will definitely fall over. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like. So safety plan is creating a detailed plan for keeping the child safe and everyone in the family or the classroom safe. Okay, it's not a behavior plan. It's not about what rewards are we going to give the child when they comply and what consequences are we going to give the child when they don't. It's not that at all. It's not ABA therapy. It's not positive behavior supports. It's none of that. Okay, that's another conversation for another day. I'm not going to go into that. This is a different mindset. This is a different approach. This is about the adult behavior, not the child. What's the adult going to do to support and scaffold the growth and healing for the child? So a safety plan is when you have a child who's way down on that first rung of the spiraling stages of growth. Remember, it's a spiral because it kind of goes back and forth. It's never 100%, that everything's hunky-dory. Things get bad, things get better, things get bad, things get better, but it's a constant spiral and you're going up and up and up. And then sometimes you spiral back down and you go back up. And it's like a slinky, it's like life. Life is like a slinky. So just think of it, this is our life. It's in the spiral and it's messy. But if we have a tangled slinky, or if we're stuck, if one of the rungs of the slinky is stuck, then we can't move forward, right? There's no motion. So creating a detailed safety plan is, I call it a rock solid safety plan. You shouldn't be restraining children, because if you're doing that, you don't have a good enough safety plan. You need to really think through what you're going to do when the child has a meltdown, because we know the child will have meltdowns. It's not going to be an either or thing. Either the child's having meltdowns or the child's not having meltdowns. This child is having meltdowns. So let's just acknowledge that and let's just make that part of our day. Say, okay, not if this child has a meltdown, but when this child has a meltdown, because this is where they are on that, this is the stage. This is what we're going to do. These are the people that are going to support the child while they're drowning. These are these are the things that help this child, whether it's a calm down corner area, sitting with another adult to help co-regulate, whether it's, there's a fidget toy that helps them calm their nervous system, getting a glass of water, going to the water fountain, being with a friend, being with a trusted adult, calling a parent, many, many, many things that you can come up with as a team. And hopefully you'll include the child in creating this safety plan if it's in a school. But at home, think through what helps calm this child. And what am I going to do if the child becomes to that 911 level and it gets really dangerous and I don't, I'm not sure if I can handle this by myself. Think that through and have that plan and have it ready. And then you just implement the plan. And the beauty of this is when you have a plan, it reduces your anxiety about the meltdowns. Because what we don't want is the child has meltdown, then the parent starts going into freak out mode. And this is what I see a lot of families that come to me for parent coaching, or they join the Heartstrong Academy, and teachers as well. They will be going into panic mode every time the child's going into panic mode. And then you have two people in panic mode, and then we have mirror neurons that are firing each other and making everything worse. So you need to be the strong anchor. If you have a safety plan, you say, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, here's the meltdown that I prepared for. Now I'm going to implement my safety plan. And you just go to that. I call it Zen mama mode or Zen teacher mode. You just get very calm. You got to be doing self-care to do this. Go very calm. You're like, okay, I'm implementing the safety plan now. And then you just become very strategic about that. Okay. All right. Let's talk about self-care. I told you yesterday, I don't nag and lecture people about self-care because I hate it when people do that to me. I see a mental health counselor on a bi-weekly basis because I think it's important for me to stay mentally healthy. And because there's a lot of anxiety when you're raising a child with anxiety, right? Or if you're a teacher and you have kids with anxiety, you need to be getting your own anxiety taken care of. So my mental health therapist is constantly saying, Sadie, what are you doing for your self-care? And it's very irritating to me when she says that. So I'm very cognizant of that when I'm teaching about self-care, because I know how irritating it is for somebody who has a very busy life, who's doing a lot of caregiving, who's got a lot on their plate, because barely keeping it together, right? You can't always do self-care in a formal way. So that's not what this is about. If you can, that's great. If you can schedule blocks of time for your self-care, whether that's getting good exercise, planning your meals, pre-prepping your meals, getting plenty of sleep, talking to friends, doing things you enjoy. All those things are really, really essential, but they often get pushed aside or we forget about them because we're too busy caregiving, right? So if you can block out time to do this, do that. I try to do that, and it's progress, not perfection in this area for me. This is probably my least strong leg of my table, right? I always have to come back to it. But self-care can just be taking a deep breath, eating stuff that's nutritious instead of eating junk food, just really just making little decisions throughout the day that are going to be helpful and nourishing to your body, to your soul, to your mind, to your spirit. Even like if you start thinking a negative thought, talk to yourself and say, okay, that's a really negative thought. What's another possibility in this situation? Is there an optimistic way of looking at this? And I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm just talking about not dwelling on all the what ifs that could possibly happen, but also thinking about what actually is right now. Like the reality is that by the way, I got that from a podcast that I listened to today. Really good. Glennon Doyle. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she just started a podcast called We Can Do Hard Things. I encourage you to go listen to it because she's talking about anxiety in the podcast. I had no idea that would be the first episode. And that's what we're talking about here too, right? Really explosive anxiety. So go listen to that after you listen to this. But anyway, ground yourself, stay in the present moment. Strategies is the third leg of the table. So strategies are all the things that I taught you, some of them yesterday, but there's hundreds of things that you can do to communicate effectively, to show how much you care about the child, to help the child feel connected, to develop the relationship, to help solve problems, all of those things. There's lots of them. And there are some that are effective and there are some that are not so effective. So I really focus in the Heartstrong Academy. We go into deep dive on effective strategies, things that actually work to build connection, to build that trust, to build that sense of independence and strength. That's why it's Heartstrong. We don't want to be in our hearts feeling like we're incapable of doing things, right? We want to help our children feel like they are capable, and we want to feel like we are capable of handling even the most stressful situation. So building that strength, building those communication skills, building the relationship, all of that, all of those things are strategies that you just implement on a daily basis in an intentional way. Okay. And then support, this one is huge. And this is another one that I've really had to be very intentional about in my life, because as I told you, I'm solo parenting. I don't have a spouse, and it's just the two of us, just me and Hero, and Thor, the dog, who he hasn't joined us lately, but sometimes he appears on the screen. You might see him later. But it's all about having a team around you of people, either local or distant. Like right now, I'm supporting you through this, right? But you can have a local team of people that you can call in a situation, or even just call to get a little moral support. It doesn't have to be physical in your house support, right? I really encourage parents and teachers as well to kind of figure out who is going to be the person you call for different kinds of things. So sometimes you want to call just to somebody to listen to you about what's going on and to come up with some strategies and some ideas. Sometimes you want to call somebody and you need them to bring you some food, or, if you're in a school, you need them to come to the classroom to watch your other kids while you are dealing with this child and taking them out to the hall to help them calm down. So there's all different kinds of ways that people can support you. And in the academy, we make a really long list and we figure this out. We delegate, we make a list of who's going to do what, who are we going to call for what. So important. Okay. So key 3 is measuring the lift factors. I call these the lift factors. LIFT is an acronym. I enjoy acronyms, so you'll see a lot of them in my program. But the lift factors are how to figure out how things are progressing, right? It's progress, not perfection. But as we're going up the spiraling stages of growth, we want to see progress. We want to see a reduction in the lift factors. And so let's talk about what those are. So you want to measure and track the lift factors over time. So lift stands for the length, the intensity, the frequency, and the triggers. Length, intensity, frequency, and triggers. So we're talking about meltdowns here, and we want to think about how long is this meltdown? Is it a 5-minute meltdown? Is it a 3-hour meltdown? What's the length, the typical length that this child, when the meltdown starts and the meltdown ends, how long does it take for them to kind of cycle through that? Intensity is how intense is the meltdown. So I mentioned this at the beginning. I have a lot of examples of intense meltdowns because we had to call police. I had to go to the emergency room. We had very, very intense meltdowns. I use a 1 through 10 scale. I know some other systems use 1 through 4. My system is 1 through 10. So 10 is the highest possible, very life-threatening meltdown where somebody's life is in danger, right? Somebody's pushing you down the stairs. They've grabbed something, they're strangling you, they're suffocating you, they've pulled a weapon on you. That's a level 10. Level 9 is they're about to do that. Level 8 is you're worried that they might think about doing that. Right? Level 7 is they're extremely aggressive and violent. And then as you go down to level 5, it's they're just very, very tense and anxious. Level 3, 2, 1. 1 is just a little bit of irritability and maybe saying some not nice things. Okay. So those are meltdowns. And when meltdowns are super intense, you're going to address them differently than you're going to address them if they're not quite as intense. So you want to measure that. You want to measure the frequency. How often is it happening? Does it happen every day? Does it happen 5 times a day? 5 times an hour, right? Look at the frequency. How often is this child having these episodes? And just keep track of it. By the way, when you keep track of this, this is not for the child's eyes. This is not for you to have class dojo or, a sticker chart at home where every time they have a meltdown, they get a check on the board. That's not what this is for. This has nothing to do with a behavior plan. This is about you as the caring adult keeping track of what's going on so that you can measure the progress, because that is what we want to focus on, right? And you'll see how all this works together. And then the triggers are, what is causing the meltdown? Why is the child going into the meltdown? Is it some kind of a sensory issue? Is it some kind of an emotional challenge that they're having? Are they having a trauma flashback? Are they being told to do something and they have pathological demand avoidance, right? And they're feeling a demand and they're feeling anxiety because of a demand. Whatever it happens to be, that's a trigger. You want to keep track of what those things are so that you can reduce the triggers and not have so many meltdowns, right? That's going to reduce the number of meltdowns. So if you can reduce the length of the meltdown, go from a 5-hour meltdown to a 1-hour meltdown is huge. And then you can celebrate that progress. If you go from level 8, 9, 10 meltdowns to level 4, 5, 6 meltdowns, that's progress. Frequency, it's happening 5 times a day. Now it's only happening once a week. That's progress. You can celebrate that. And when I say celebrate that, I'm talking about celebrating that as the adult, but also celebrating it with the child and pointing it out to them. That's when you involve the child. You don't involve the child when you're keeping track of what's going on. You involve the child when you notice how much progress they've made, and then you let them know that, wow, you used to have meltdowns like 4 or 5 times a week. Now you're only having them once or twice a week. Great job, sweetheart. High five. I'm really proud of you. Are you proud of yourself? How do you feel about that? And you have those conversations. And this is the magic of the Heartstrong system. This is the ONG. Heartstrong is also an acronym. I'm not sure if I told you that, but heart is HEART. Those are all the things that we use to connect. And strong is how we use to build up our children up to those spiraling stages of growth. And ONG stands for optimistic narratives of growth. So you want to give the child optimism. Tell them the story of their growth. Tell them the story of how much they're getting better and better and better. Because that's the narrative we want them to have in their head, not I'm such a horrible child. I have meltdowns. I can't handle my big emotions. I'm the bad child. That's not the track you want in their head. The track you want going on in their head is I'm getting better. I used to do this, but now I'm doing this. I'm so much more mature than I used to be. I'm able to handle this now. And that's what you focus on, and what you focus on grows. That's the magic of the system. So it's very exciting when that happens. So again, just to review the length, how long does the explosive episode last? The intensity, levels 1 to 10, mild to dangerous. Frequency, how often is the child having these episodes? And the triggers, what usually causes the episode. Okay. Celebrate the progress. This really helps you. I've had so many, it helps the child, obviously, because they're going to start seeing themselves as being somebody who's progressing, who's getting better and better and improving. But it helps caregivers, parents and teachers, because I have talked to so many folks who, they have this child that's challenging, and they say, oh, I thought we did all these things, and I thought they knew how to use their coping skills. And, they were, having all these meltdowns. And yesterday she had another huge meltdown. I just feel like, we're not, everything I do is not working. It's not working. But then I asked them, well, how many meltdowns did they have last week? Well, she had one every day. Well, how many did she have this week? Well, just that one. That's progress. That's better. She's getting better. So don't focus on the fact that she had a meltdown. Focus on the fact that she is having fewer of them. Look at those lift factors, and that helps you feel more confident. It helps you feel like things can actually change. Things are getting better. Things are changing. Remember yesterday at the very beginning of this, I told you it's so important to have that mindset that things can change. Things can get better. I can get better. My child can get better. It's not always going to be this horrible. We have good days and bad days, but things are getting better. That's the attitude you want to bring to this whole process, because your child's going to catch your attitude. If they feel like you are just doing eye rolls every time they walk in the room, like they come in the room, you're, here we go again, another meltdown. That's just the way she is. They're going to start believing that about themselves. So you want to bust that belief. You want to think in terms of your child as someone who's getting better and better and better. And then they're going to catch that vision, and they're going to say, mom thinks I'm getting better. I guess I am getting better. And then they start living up to that prophecy, right? You don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity. You want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy of optimism, growth, and healing. Okay. So they're going to decrease. Those lift factors will start to decrease once you focus on how they're decreasing. They start decreasing more, and that's exciting, and you celebrate that. And then that helps everybody see the potential that the child has. All right. So that is what I have for you today. I would love for you to type your questions in the chat. If you have questions that are more complex and you want to set up a time to talk to me, you can always reach out to me at support@wingbuilder.com. I'm going to take a look at a couple of the questions that you may have, and then I'll open the floor to anybody who wants to ask me, who's brave enough to ask out loud. So let me see. If you have any questions, just go ahead and post them in the chat. No questions? if you don't have questions, what is the one takeaway? You can type this in the chat. What's the one takeaway from today's training that you would like to remember to implement this week when you're working with a child who has some challenges? I'll take a look at your chat. And you're welcome to unmute yourself if you have something specific you want to talk about. Everybody's so quiet. So Melissa says, I just feel super validated by the self-care info that you shared, normalizing talking about therapy. Oh, yes. I think we all probably need a little therapy after this year, for sure. But many of us have, clinical depression or anxiety or other things going on, and that's okay. That's very normal. I think 1 out of every 4 adults, at least pre-pandemic, 1 out of every 4 adults experience some kind of mental illness or mental clinical depression. So that's very, very normal to have that. But I think now, since the pandemic and many other world events that have happened this year, I think a lot of people their anxiety has increased, or maybe it's been triggered by some things too. Yes, Melissa says, I wish therapy were more accessible. Just had an appointment yesterday. Yeah, it's not accessible to everybody. It's hard. Here's going to be going back. I have permission to share this with you, but it's been really hard for us to get an appointment. So Linder says, yesterday helped me deal with baby meltdowns by remembering to stay calm. Great. Yeah, that's all you have to do. When you've got meltdowns, in the meltdown, that's the only thing you have to remember. Just stay calm. We're drowning here. The baby's drowning. The child is drowning. I need to get the child to dry land. And that's it. No discussion, none of that. That comes later. Great job. Laurel says, I love the idea of celebrating progress with my child. Yes. And so the phrase that I teach parents and teachers to use, and you can use this, is you used to blank, whatever that is, but now you blank. This is the magic phrase. So you say, wow, sweetheart, you used to get really mad whenever I didn't take you for ice cream after school because I had another appointment, whatever it is. Like they're melting down because you can't go to get the ice cream. You used to have a meltdown almost every time, but now you get a little bit upset sometimes, but you don't throw things at mommy's head anymore. That's amazing, sweetheart. High five. Okay. Now that sounds ridiculous. And I literally had these conversations with my son. Sweetheart, I could see that just now you wanted to hit me, but you didn't hit me. Great job, sweetheart. And I'm laughing now because it's like, these are not conversations that you hear people having in public, but in private, you can have this conversation. You can say, wow, you really wanted to hurt me, but you didn't. That's awesome. You restrained yourself from doing that. I didn't have to restrain you, right? That's the key. We don't want to have to do that. But you can literally thank them for using their coping skill in that moment. Or your brother, your brother was bothering you and you really wanted to grab his toy, but I could see that you just took some deep breaths. And here's the other magic part. This is like the part B to this. If you can get them to start thinking about what it was they did to calm down themselves, this is that self-regulation that I always say you want to co-regulate with the child, because self-regulation is hard for kids to do on their own. They really need a caring adult with them. That's why the calm down corners, you got to watch it. You don't want to just send a kid to the calm down corner by themselves, because that's isolating and it feels like a punishment sometimes. You be careful with that. But anyway, with, if they're, you didn't take the toy, what you can say to them, what did you do to calm yourself in that moment, sweetie? You did such an amazing job. You wanted to hit him and you wanted to grab his toy, but I noticed that you didn't grab his toy. You just stopped for a minute. And then what were you doing in that moment? How did you stop yourself? Because you did such an amazing job at staying calm. How did you do that? And then they start to think, well, I don't know. How did I? They really don't know the answer to the question, but it just gets the wheels turning so that they start noticing their own coping strategies. And then again, you're bringing attention and you're bringing positive focus to that instead of the fact that they were yelling at the kid, I want your toy. Maybe they were yelling, I want your toy, I want your toy. But screaming, I want your toy is a whole lot better than grabbing the toy and hitting the child, right? That's progress. So you celebrate the progress. You don't celebrate only when they're perfect angels, because nobody's always a perfect angel. Nobody is, not even adults, right? Celebrate the progress. Excellent. Concept of explosive anxiety. Yeah, it's just fear. It's not defiance. It's not opposition, right? That's why I don't like the label ODD, because that assumes that they're opposing authority. Well, maybe the authority is not a good authority, right? I don't know. You know, so the idea is it's just panic. It's a panic attack. They're terrified. They're not defiant. They're terrified. Okay. Laurel says, my calm yesterday nipped 2 potential major meltdowns in the bud. Yes. Woohoo. All right. Excellent, Laurel. And Laurel, what did you do to stay calm? How did you do that? This is how I would talk to the kids, right? So tell me, Laurel, how did you stay calm? What did you do? Did you take breaths? Did you count to 3? Did you think about the drowning analogy? What did you do to stay calm? You can type it in the chat. All right. Linder says self-reflective. Self-reflective. Yeah. Being reflective about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Excellent. Yeah. This is great. All right. So I'm going to end the live now. Gosh, we'll be going over time. I just talk for a really long time, but I'm enjoying this time with you. So stay on. Those of you who are here live, stay on. We'll have some time for you to you can turn your video on and we'll have some more conversation that will not be on the recording, so that if you don't feel comfortable sharing with the whole world. But those of you who are watching the recording, if you can join us live, that's fantastic. If not, if you have a question for me, you can always send it to support@wingbuilder.com and I'd be happy to help you out. Okay. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.